You say yes when you mean no. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You shrink yourself in rooms where you should feel free. And the strangest part? You're not weak. You're not naive. In fact, you're often one of the most emotionally intelligent people in any space you enter. So why does it feel impossible to just stop? Here's what nobody tells you. People-pleasing isn't a personality flaw. It's a survival strategy that worked once, and your nervous system never got the memo that the danger passed. Let's talk about what's really happening inside the mind of a people-pleaser. You know that feeling when someone seems slightly annoyed and your entire internal world reorganizes itself around figuring out why and how to fix it. You didn't plan to do that. It just happened, automatically, like breathing. Or maybe you recognize this. You leave a conversation replaying it, searching for the moment you said something wrong, something too much, something that might have cost you their approval. You weren't even fully present in the conversation. Part of you was already in the courtroom, defending yourself against a verdict that hasn't been delivered yet. You say, "I'm fine," so often and so convincingly that sometimes you forget to check whether it's true. And when someone actually asks you what you need, there's this strange blankness. Like the question is in a language you were never taught. You feel responsible for other people's emotions. Not intellectually, you know that's not entirely rational. But in your body, in the pit of your stomach, when someone near you is unhappy, it feels like your fault, like your job, like an alarm you can't ignore until it's been silenced. If any of that landed somewhere deep, keep watching. Because what I'm about to say changes how you see all of it. Here's the part most people miss entirely. People pleasers are not people who love too much. They are people who learned, usually very early, that their needs were negotiable, but other people's emotions were not. Think about that for a second. Somewhere in your story, maybe in a childhood home where love felt conditional, or with a parent whose mood set the temperature of every room, or in a friendship where you learned that being too much meant being abandoned, you made a calculation, not consciously. Your nervous system made it for you. The calculation was this: my safety depends on your happiness, and so you became extraordinary at reading rooms, at sensing tension before it was spoken, at preemptively adjusting yourself to prevent conflict, rejection, or emotional withdrawal. You became, essentially, an emotional first responder, except the emergency you were always responding to was someone else's discomfort. The cruel irony, the very skill that protected you became the cage that confines you. Picture this. It's a Tuesday evening, your phone buzzes, a friend asks if you can help them move this weekend. The weekend you've been mentally protecting for 2 months. The weekend you promised yourself you'd rest, decompress, finally breathe. You stare at the message. You feel the no form somewhere in your chest. Clear, true, yours. And then, almost before you've decided anything, your fingers are already typing, of course, what time. You put your phone down, and there's this particular kind of exhaustion that settles in. Not from the future effort of helping, but from the quiet violence of having betrayed yourself. Again, in such a small, invisible way that no one would ever call it what it is. You tell yourself it's kindness, and maybe it partly is, but underneath the kindness is fear. Fear of disappointing them, fear of being seen as selfish, fear that if you say no enough times the relationship will dissolve, that they'll realize you were only lovable when you were useful. That's not generosity. That's self-abandonment dressed in generous clothing. People-pleasing doesn't look the same at every stage of a person's life. It evolves, it gets more sophisticated, and understanding these layers is how you begin to see yourself more clearly. In the beginning, usually childhood or adolescence, it's pure survival. You learn what version of yourself gets love, and you perform that version relentlessly. You're praised for being so mature, so easy, no trouble at all, and those words sink in like programming. Then comes the second phase, identity fusion. You've performed this version of yourself for so long, you begin to believe it is you. You think you genuinely don't mind. You think you want to help everyone. The mask has become the face. The coping mechanism has become the personality. The third phase, and this is where most people watching this are, is the fracture. Something happens. Burnout. Resentment. A relationship that takes and takes until there's nothing left. A moment of quiet where you realize you don't actually know what you want because you've never practiced wanting things for yourself. The fracture is painful, but it's also the first honest moment in years. You've been watching this far, which means this is landing. You might as well like this video and follow for more. We talk about things like this all the time on this channel. Real psychology, no fluff. Now let's keep going, because this next part matters. Here is the emotional truth most people pleasers spend their whole lives avoiding. You're not afraid of conflict. You're afraid of loss. Every time you swallow a boundary, cancel your own needs, or contort yourself to keep the peace, you're not trying to be nice. You're trying to prevent someone from leaving, from withdrawing their love, from confirming the fear that lives beneath everything, that you, without your usefulness, are not enough. And here's the second truth, the one that cuts even deeper. The relationships built on your people-pleasing aren't actually safe. They're comfortable for everyone else. The real you, the one with preferences and limits and needs, has never been fully let into the room. So in the very relationships you've worked the hardest to protect, you are the least known. You have been loved for your performance, and some part of you suspects it, which is why the exhaustion never quite goes away. Now here's the shift, not advice, a different way of seeing. People-pleasing was never about other people. It was always about the version of yourself you believed was acceptable, the edited version, the safe version, the version that wouldn't be too much, too needy, too difficult, too real. Every yes you didn't mean was a vote for the belief that your authentic self needed to be hidden. Every apology you didn't owe was a small act of preemptive shrinking, making yourself smaller before anyone else could make you feel small. But here's what's also true. The fact that you developed this capacity means you are deeply attuned. You feel things acutely. You care about emotional harmony in a way that is genuinely rare. Those are not weaknesses to be eliminated. They're gifts that have been misdirected, pointed outward when they were always supposed to also include you. The path forward isn't learning to care less about people, it's learning to include yourself in the category of people you care about. We started with a question. Why does someone so emotionally intelligent find it so hard to stop betraying themselves? And now you know. Because it was never really about intelligence. It was about a nervous system that learned love was something you earned through accommodation. A self that learned approval was safer than authenticity. A heart that grew so fluent in everyone else's needs that it forgot to ever ask about its own. You're not broken. You're not too sensitive. You're not weak for having felt all of this. You're someone whose survival required a particular kind of sacrifice, and who is only now beginning to realize the war is over. You're allowed to take up space now, not because you've earned it, not because you've helped enough people or said yes enough times, because you were always allowed to. You just forgot.